Degrees on Sunday. Now, you do have a low pressure trough which will be crossing the state over the course of Sunday and into Monday. So that could bring us some rain over Sunday and into Monday. And that could bring us rain on the forecast in 20 days. Monday, though, looking dry with a top of 21 degrees and then fine for the remainder of next week. In our
Hey everyone. Hey Liz, I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you today.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
You're on my list. Cool.
Oh, it was just something fun to think about, having a little Darlo Darlings team for City to Surf.
Yeah, I know. Hey Michael.
Hi, Jen.
Chat.
Hey Liz. Hi Marion.
Hey Sarah. Hey Marion. Hey Jen.
All good, Marion, thank you.
Craig joining now. Hello, Craig.
Hello.
Are you okay?
I am okay. How are you?
I'm great. Actually, I've had a really shit day, but I won't bother you.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, just work, just general stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing bad.
The second person today who's had like a shitty work day.
I'm just admitting people to the call because I thought they could just join without being admitted, but I'll keep watching that.
Okay. I hate when it defaults to that.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Annoying. Do you want to give people another couple of minutes? And then
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
give you a chance to get tea.
How's your day been, Craig? Have there been any live events today?
I have had 5 talks today, including this one. 2 of them, I've gone into a couple of offices. I just had a chat with someone there, but live streamed the whole conversation out. It's just been good. I've actually had like a bit of like personal interaction, which is nice.
Yeah.
How's your day?
Good. It's always better when you have personal interaction.
It is. It is. Like I haven't had much of it recently, so it's quite nice.
Hey Anne, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, mate.
How's Tim going?
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, real good.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well.
Yeah.
It's been interesting time, but yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, that's good. Have you got many joining in tonight?
I think so. We've had quite a few acceptances, and I've just posted the link as well back in the group to see if others wanted to join as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was nice and easy to join in. That was good. Yeah.
Trying to make it easy.
Yeah. Hi, Craig. I'm Anne.
Hey. Nice to meet you, Anne.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, Luke.
I like your T-shirt.
Excuse me. Oh, very fitting for the day, right?
Yeah, very. Great.
I've got my yellow beads on.
Oh, good on you. Hi, I'm Anne.
I'm Sarah. Hi.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you.
Marion was showing her puppies just before.
Oh, was she?
They help themselves to my lap.
Oh,
Hello.
My cat might make a surprise appearance at some point. We'll see.
I love your cat. I met Craig's cat 2 weeks ago at his place. What's his name again?
Chewy.
What was it?
Chewy.
Huey, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he loves chewing on my hand.
Gorgeous.
Hello, Mike. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm okay. Are we all Sydney-siders? Because I'm a Brisbaneite.
That's okay. We love Queensland. We can't get there at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm originally from Queensland.
Oh, you admitted that, didn't you?
Of course, it doesn't matter.
Been to Queensland.
Cool. I'm not originally from Sydney, but I lived there quite a lot, a couple of times, and been there probably about 50 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I say hello to you all, but I have to say hello to Craig because today is the first day that I've actually spoken to Craig, even though we've worked together. We haven't been able. When I was in Sydney, I was only there for like less than 48 hours, I think. So I couldn't. It's good to finally speak to you in person, Craig. Awesome.
Like face to face.
Yeah, awesome. Excuse me, why I shouldn't be advertising, should I? But
You're fine.
it's delicious though. It's spinach. Mike, I did send you a message, but I got an answer, so through you on Facebook. But don't worry about it. I got the answer.
Oh,
It was after
Messenger or?
Well, what it was I was wondering whether this was going to be recorded and publicly available later on. There's just a couple of people who might be interested, but they can't make it. They got other Zoom meetings. They got other Zoom meetings. You know what it's like.
Yeah, they're non-stop at the moment.
They are.
I'm not sure if I think I meant to reply to you on that, and I might not have. I think we are going to record this session. So once we get started, what I was going to say is because we're going to record it and we might make it available to others. If anyone doesn't want to be recorded, like feel free to turn your cameras off if you like, or to cover those, just so you don't get sent out to the world without your permission, because we wouldn't want to do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I think we're all open books these days. So.
Yes.
Some people are a bit sensitive and funny.
Excuse me.
But should we kick off?
Yeah, why not?
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to drink wine during the session?
Yeah.
It's been a big day.
I won't be, but
Oh, hey, Philip.
How are you going?
hello, Philip.
Can you hear me?
And
Oh, good. I'll try not to make extraneous noises then.
I just wanted to say to Craig, thank you so much for organising this. I mean, Craig's
Thank
just
you.
a champion in this space, and you know, he does incredible work as well across social media for major events like TEDx and things like that as well. But he's just his story is really inspiring, and I just can't thank you enough, Craig. Thank you.
Hey, Mike. Sorry, Craig. You go first. I interrupted you.
go for it.
Can I just say there's a little bit of crawling, but Mike, I discovered Craig a few years ago, but his blog, Craig on Toast, he did a makeover a few months ago. It's absolutely outstanding. I recommend anyone, probably you've all had a look, I don't know, but it's just absolutely, the Smurf Village post today was excellent. But yeah, no, go and have a look. It's just a good example of web design too. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but I love when Craig writes. The honesty is just remarkable, and it's just taught me a few things or two as well around just being more authentic as a person and sharing things that we often keep to ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with sharing and being yourself. And Craig's blog is a great example of that.
Thank you. I'll talk a little bit about the Smurfs a bit later on. It's a little bit weird, but it works. for me. So yeah, look, I just want to say thanks everyone for making the time for this chat this evening. I've kind of been doing this all day, and I find them really valuable and interesting for everyone, because we get to share and talk about this thing that we don't normally get to talk about in a space that's really safe and open. And you probably work out I'm a really open book as I talk. So if you guys have, like, if there's any questions that come up, or if there's anything that you want to know more about, feel free to chuck any questions in the chat, or message me privately if you like. And I can answer any of those questions probably at the end as you go, because what I thought I might do is tell you a little bit about my story and how I got involved with Are You OK, and some of the strategies and tips when it comes to looking after ourselves and our own mental health, as well as checking in with other people, and how to actually do that in a really safe, non-confrontational way. Because that's the thing we don't really know how to do. And I think we get a bit scared of these conversations. But yeah, feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you like. But to tell a bit about me, I got involved with Are You OK about 3-4 years ago in 2017. And it sort of came about because I'd seen so many friends posting and talking about friends of theirs who had who had taken their own lives, and all of the conversation was around, I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know that they were feeling that way. They seemed so happy and engaged with life and full of energy. And I wish that I'd done something, but I don't even know what I could have done. And after a while, it started to really resonate with me because of my own story. And I sort of thought, I've got a way to help, and I've got things to share. So I should probably jump up and do something about it. And I approached Are You OK? And it's one of the many things that I do. Kind of as Mike said, I kind of do social media for TEDx Sydney. And I do this as a volunteer, and I have my own kind of social media and content strategy business that I freelance. I'm a lot out in copywriting, and I teach social media at Macleay College, and speak at conferences, and do a bit of modeling, and do all these different things. And one of my bosses a few years ago asked me why I need to do so much and have my hands in so many different things. And it was really interesting because I didn't have an answer for her at the time, but it made me kind of sit back and think, why can't I give anything up? And why do I need to do all this stuff? And it sort of took me back to my childhood, because that's where everything starts. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a wild ride on this story. So I will say that there are some triggers in there that may bring some things up. If anything does come up for you guys, make sure that you can have it to me after, or at any time. That's fine. Or reach out to your own networks to talk and debrief if you need to. The spoiler in the story is like, he makes it in the end and he's still kind of writing it. So it's kind of fine. It's just a bit of an adventure to get there. It all kind of started when I was a kid, and I grew up with a mother who was a heroin addicted, drug dealing hooker in this crazy environment that a kid shouldn't be in, that was full of like bikie gangs and police raids and overdoses and drug deals. And even in primary school, everybody that I went to school with, their parents would get their drugs from my mother. And then when I got to high school, the kids I went to school with and my teachers and their parents would all get their drugs from my mother. So all the way through growing up, everybody knew, and I was really exposed to being in this hot mess. But I knew that there was nothing that I could do about it, so I sort of just had to get through it. And at home, it was interesting because I wasn't a priority at all, and I sort of knew that the drugs and the lifestyle and everything else was. And the safest thing for me was to kind of hide away. And I knew that I wasn't kind of high on the list, like as just an example of the madness. When I was 6, I was about 6. One of my chores as a child was rolling joints, and I kind of got taught how to do that so that when everybody in the house was so out of it that nobody could, there was somebody in the house who could do it. Really good logic. That's what you teach a kid, right? So I had that going on at home, and then at school, I didn't really have any friends, particularly past the school gate, because all of the parents were like, you can be friends with any kid but that one, which made perfect sense to me even as a 6 or 7-year-old, because I was like, well, yeah, as a parent, of course, you wouldn't want to put your kids into that environment. So it made perfect sense, but it also meant that I didn't really have any friends, and I was pretty isolated and on my own as a kid. It's interesting. This environment that we're in now is kind of my default from that childhood. I'm really, really good at self-isolating and hiding away, almost to my detriment in some ways. But all of that, all the way through it, I knew that I didn't want that environment to own me, even at 10, 12 years old, because I knew that it was toxic and unhealthy and not right. So I did what I could to protect myself from it. And then when I was about 15, I moved in with my uncle and his partner, and away from that and into probably the most opposite environment that I could have. I went from getting home from school some days when I was 10 to $500 on the table and a note saying, I'll be back in a week, I've just gone to pick stuff up, to living in Kew in Melbourne, which is one of the most affluent suburbs, going to Carey Grammar, which is one of the most expensive and exclusive schools in Melbourne, and into this disciplined, structured environment. But again, surrounded by kids that I couldn't relate to, because I was listening to the problems that they'd have. And it was things like their parents didn't buy them a new car when they were learning to drive. They had to do it in a second-hand one. Or the horses that they had, their parents had decided to restable them, so now they had to drive an hour to the stables instead of 45 minutes, and things like this. And I was like, you've never watched your mother overdose, and it shows. I just couldn't relate. So I was, again, that had that isolation, and that kind of led to starting to self-harm, and my first attempt at 16 to check out early, as I put it. And kind of at that point, my uncle had no idea what to do with this hot mess kid that he'd been handed, and I had no idea what to do with what was going on, and I wasn't ready to talk or process anything. So sort of went into therapy, but didn't achieve anything out of it. But found meds to kind of level me out and do what they needed to do, which was great. And I'm kind of giving you guys like the horror highlights of my life. It's not all been this mad, horrible thing. There's good things in there. But, from there, I kind of went on and, finished my first degree and moved to Sydney and turned myself into a drag queen, like sparkling in the center of stages here, and just being like the attention seeker that I am, for the fun of it, and kind of being out there and loud, and having a lot of fun. But I always had this thing in the back of my head that I couldn't quite nail and I knew wasn't quite right. And at around 24, I kind of had what I call my midlife car crash. And that was sort of my big second attempt to check out. And that was an interesting one, where it just felt like everything that I'd been holding on to for about 24 years was crashing down, and I had no barriers and I had no control to hold it back anymore. And the only thing that could stop the pain from that was not being around, and not being here, and I couldn't see any other way out. And I was at home, and my housemate was out, and I had my plan, and I did what I did. And about 3 days later, I woke up in St. Vincent's Hospital with 3 doctors staring at me, and not very happy about that. Happy about it now most of the time, but at the time I was really not. And the doctors explained to me what happened, because I had no memory. The last thing I remember was being in my room. And I walked myself from Crown Street, where I lived, to St. Vincent's, admitted myself through the ER, quite fluently explained to the doctors and nurses that were on what had happened and what I was doing there. And then sort of was sedated and passed out. And was that for 3 days. And that was both like pretty horrible, but also there was a lot of benefit that sort of came out of that. Kind of led to some really good extensive therapy and work to pull all the damage apart and put it back together with healthier coping strategies and ways to manage it all and be able to process everything from a childhood that was all pretty intense. And that kept me going. Like that was some really powerful stuff came out of that. A lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of behavior change, a lot of like self-awareness and introspection and changing my relationship and perception of my place in the world and myself, which all needed to be done. And it's interesting, depression and anxiety and mental health and all of these things are a different experience for everyone. Some people have it as it's related to an event that's happened, or something coming up from the past and really taking over, and you work through that event, do the therapy and the things you need to do to get there, and it never really comes back to haunt you again, at least to the depths that it did during that. And then you get people like me who I kind of say that I've got a lifetime ticket to ride on the roller coaster. So it just goes up and down.
Craig, I was going to ask, how's that impacted your relationship with your mother, with the growing up scenario?
I don't speak to my mother. We're friends on Facebook, but she knows not to interact because I'm not interested. My biggest struggle with her, and this is something that I only came to understand fully maybe 3-4 years ago, is she has never accepted any responsibility for it. So in her mind, like, she was a great mother and she did everything that she could possibly do to give me a life and look after me. And listening to her say that and hearing my grandparents repeat it used to enrage me. I'd just be like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, look at that situation. How can you say that?" And it occurred to me about 3-4 years ago that she spent 30 years as a heroin addict. So of course she has this blurred, distorted vision of the life that she's had and doesn't remember any of the stuff that I talk about. So she's got this wonderful benefit of none of it ever happening. And that's why she sees herself as doing the best thing, as like being a great mum. And once I sort of realized, like, of course you don't remember it, then I just became at peace with it. I was like, it's fine. I get why you don't remember it, but that's exactly why I can't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, and it's as a son, I would just be, if that was my mother, I'd be just so gutted and disappointed. And I don't think I know you told me that story a few months ago when we caught up, and I just felt so devastated for you because I just could, seeing your own mother in that light is just unimaginable for so many people.
Yeah, it's like it completely unimaginable. I think the thing that finally broke it for me was maybe when I was 16, and it was definitely a trigger to everything else. Was calling her for her birthday, and her being so out of it. That I was like, oh, it's Craig, and her response is, I don't know anyone by that name. And I was like, your son? She's like, no, no, I don't have a son. Are you sure you've got the right number? And like, I literally just hung up.
Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was kind of the end of me, and the definite start of a massive decline. But from that, it's also like anything else you do from there is like go and try and beat that.
Yeah. And when do you go from that being? I mean, that's obviously a situation has happened. The depression result of that wouldn't occur until much later, I'd imagine. It'd be sort of a shock at the beginning, and then over time, with the realization sinking in, you slowly become more and more depressed about the situation without even knowing.
Yeah, and I think I mean, even before that, as a child, like one of the things we look back with therapy, my behavior as an 8-9-year-old, where I didn't really relate to anybody else, and I couldn't, and sometimes I still feel uncomfortable about it, and I would isolate myself in my room, and the one joy of it all was a lot of the guilt. I had every toy that a 9-year-old could possibly want, which is probably why I'm rebuilding my Lego collection. But I could easily lock myself in my room for hours and just play with that, or because like some kids rebel by going the crazy path in their parents. My rebellion was like being a good student and studying and doing all these things. So even at that age, like the depression and the impact of loneliness and isolation was obvious when you look back on it. It wasn't just me protecting myself from what was going on in the house. It was my relationship with the world was distorted. So, and then it's just sort of, kind of grew and grew. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Wow.
But then kind of all of that then led through to my third attempt in my mid-30s, which was built around something completely else. Like I was going through a career change, and then I changed jobs and gone down about 4 steps and lost a whole lot of money and had a relationship breakup, but was studying and going through all this stuff, and it all just got too much, and got sucked into this black hole. And kind of as I was crawling out of that third and last attempt, I started looking back on everything, how I'd got there again, the other things that I'd done in my life, my relationship with my mother, and what that was like, and how I really felt about her, and how I felt about friends. And the one thing that probably stood out the most was in all of the big 3 holes, there was nobody around, and I was kind of by myself to deal with it all. Like when I was 16, my uncle and I and my grandparents had no idea what to do, so we were in the dark. And then in my mid-20s and in that event in the 30s, because I'm incredibly good at self-isolating, I didn't really have anything to do with anyone for 6 months in my 20s, and like 3 to 4 months in that time in my 30s. But both times, none of my friends were really around. Like nobody kind of checked in, and it wasn't like, oh, we haven't seen you, and you're not like sparkling center of a stage, like being an attention seeker, like what's going on, let's catch up. let's do dinner or coffee or something. And that just didn't happen. And it made me think that like people just didn't care and nobody noticed, and I didn't mean anything. And I look back on that now, and my perception on that has changed completely, and comes into why I think Are You Okay is so important. Like I have a role in that because I am incredibly good at disappearing, but other people have a role in that as well. Like this friendship and everything is a two-way street.
So let's take a look ahead.
Coming out of that, one thing that started to happen as well was I had one friend who would just start sending me gift chats and memes, and we'd end up in these hour-long conversations about nothing, but by gifts and memes, just as a bit of entertainment. And she'd call me up and be like, "Hey, let's catch up and go to the park and have coffee and catch up, and like we just talk about life and Star Trek and boys and whatever." But it was her way of connecting and showing that there was kind of someone around. And that kind of one connection really helped with digging myself out of it. And that's where Are You Okay really comes in. We kind of talk about the whole, how a conversation can change a life and how meaningful these connections can be. But for me, it's really as simple as knowing how to be a friend in those tough times that we're not familiar with and don't know how to be. And it's kind of going through and giving some skills and some tips and some ideas around how to do that. Because when I look back on it now, what I actually see instead of people not caring is there's a whole lot of things that get in the way of us being able to have these conversations, whether it's you've never experienced it before, so I don't know what to say. So people kind of think, oh, anything I say is going to be wrong. And I'm just going to make it worse. Or I don't have any answers to any questions. So just having silence reflected back from someone who's expecting answers is just going to make it worse. Or if I start talking and make that connection, am I then responsible for that person? Do I need to keep an eye on them? And that's a lot of work. I don't think I can do that. So it's all these things that get in the way that are all just rubbish, because like when it comes down to it, none of us are mental health workers unless we are. So there's some conversations that we shouldn't be having anyway, and that need to be handed over to professionals or any of the hundreds of support services and resources that are available online, like Black Dog and Beyond Blue and Are You Okay and so many others, which there's a link on the Are You Okay website to find help that links to a whole lot of different orgs. I've got one on the blog post that I shared as well. That's got a whole lot of different places. I think that's one of the most important things, is knowing that I don't need to have the answers, because ultimately everyone always has their own answers, and it's about working through and finding them and getting there. And that's where those support services come in. And we don't need to have the solutions. And if we're scared about saying the wrong thing, about the worst thing you can do is just let someone sit in silence in that environment. Like stepping up and reaching out and just being a friend for a chat can literally be life-changing in that situation. And what Are You Okay does so well, I think, is take what people see as a really confronting or difficult or unknown conversation and make it really simple. So there's sort of 4 steps, and there's a lot more information again on the Are You Okay site, and that I link through on my blog, that kind of talks about the 4 steps of how to have this conversation once you can see that somebody's not quite right, and kind of not at one with the world. And those steps are firstly asking the question, taking the time to listen, encouraging action to help people start to get out of this hole, and checking in. And to go back to them, like asking the question can be as simple as, are you okay? There's 1,000 ways to ask this question. You know, like, hey, we haven't seen you for a while, like what's going on? Or I saw that you ditched the party like really early the other night, or you know, really uncomfortable talking to people, like, is there something going on? You know, are you okay? There's 1,000 other ways to ask that question, again, on the site. So I'd say if you're ever kind of thinking of going into these conversations and want some ideas, just jump on there and have a quick look, or even just jump on the Are You OK social pages and get some ideas of questions or way to approach it, to start in a really kind of open, safe way. And then once you've kind of cracked it open, the next step's all about listening. And, you know, in the world today, we kind of talk about, we often listen to respond, or, you know, or have an answer, or show that we know something, or jump in and want to help. And in these conversations, the thing that you really want to do is really active, open listening, and just being present, and letting the silence in, and letting the time for the person to talk and form the words and form the thoughts to be able to get the discussion out. And if we jump in with answers to try and solve things or finish someone's sentences or anything like that, it actually can shut those down pretty easily. And chances are the things that you're probably jumping into might not be right. So it's sitting back and you probing questions and getting people to talk more, but giving them the space to talk. Is really important. And if you're doing that and you're listening to what they're saying and picking up on different cues, the third step's really easy, and that's all about encouraging action, and in positive action. Because, you know, in that space, we kind of get stuck in the problem and like, oh, everything's too hard. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how to get out of this. And the whole encouraging action is about reconnecting people with the things that bring them joy, which self-care is really all about. You know, we talk a lot about self-care, but when it comes down to it, it's just finding the things that enrich our soul and give us joy, and doing more of those, and bringing a bit of balance and all to life. And there's some really simple things to do that. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the 100 Days of Happiness challenge. But it's a really cool, simple gratitude challenge that, you know, for 100 days, every day it presents a different thing to look for, something to be grateful for each day, in really simple ways. And they can be stuff like, you know, an amazing walk around the park on a fresh spring day or summer day, or like a great book that you found and read, or anything from like the meditation that people like, to yoga, to playing with Lego, or, you know, looking for more sneakers if you have a sneaker addiction like me, or just whatever it is that connects you back to the things that make you you. So that's what that happiness challenge can do. I also have things like this, they call it, which is like a smile jar. And like every time something makes me happy or makes me smile, I just write it on a colored bit of paper and stick it in the jar. And what you end up getting out of it is those days when inner critic kind of kicks in and is like, life sucks and it's all horrible and it's hard and it's never going to be any fun. By doing the smile jar, you end up with this jar of evidence that that's not true. And it kind of makes you more conscious about the things that you do and why you do them as well. And it's really funny, when I started doing it, I thought it would be full of big, amazing, fun things like great concerts and big nights out and you know, big catch-ups and talking at conferences and doing stuff like this. But what I found is 90% of the stuff that's in here is like forgettable moments of life that are actually the joys, like, you know, coffee with a friend that you haven't seen for a while, or, you know, a great chat, or you know, those great walks, you know, or finding an amazing series on Netflix that just sucked you in, or going to check out Hobbiton, like Jason and I did kind of earlier in the year, and just fun little stuff. And when you go through it, it's just this little jar of joy. And people use it on New Year's Eve and pull it out to look back at all the great moments, or you can just dip into it on a shit day to find happiness. So encouraging action is little things like that, or it goes through to the more serious healthcare stuff, like make an appointment with your GP or your healthcare professional, or I've done with a couple of people. I'm just going to call an ambulance right now, because you kind of need one. So they don't have to be big, intense, hard conversations, or really big things that you're encouraging people to do. It's just about reframing and getting people to connect. And if you're doing that, the fourth step is really easy, and it's kind of just about checking in. So that friend who would send me messages and gifts and stuff like that was just showing that they were around and they're present, and what they were doing was genuine, and it wasn't just a one-off thing, because these conversations aren't just for, you know, September 10 and Are You OK Day. They can and should be happening all year round. So it's like there's a lot more information about this on my blog and the link I sent through, and on the Are You OK site as well, that can help you like prepare for or get some ideas on how to approach someone who's struggling. But going back to the whole why I need to be so busy doing all these things, we all have that inner critic that tells us these horrible things, right, about ourselves. And for me, doing all of those things is a way that I can challenge and beat that critic. So I name my inner critic. His name's Wesley. But by giving him a name, it makes it tangible. And it means that when that inner critic starts, I'm not getting 20 different horrible thoughts telling me that, my grammar's terrible and my hair's bad and, I'm really dumb, fat and ugly and stupid, and what am I trying to do with my life? It's just Wesley being really friggin' annoying, and I can just be like, shut up, Wesley, I don't care. And it makes that critic so much easier to manage, and it brings all of those thoughts into one thing. So doing all these different things, like the modeling thing, when he starts up on me and tells me that I'm like fat and ugly, I'm like, yes, I've been kind of doing the modeling thing for good 5 years now, and on average I probably get a job every month out of that. And I've done a couple of campaigns that were national, and a couple have gone international, and there was like that big billboard thing. And I don't think that if I was fat and ugly I'd be getting these things. Or when he tells me that I'm stupid and will never get anywhere, I'm like, well, I was kind of running the social media team for like a global ad marketing agency for a couple of years, and I'm doing the freelancer sole trader thing now with my own business as imperfectly as I do it. But I'm pretty sure that if I was stupid, I wouldn't have got there. So it gives me evidence to just shut him down and be like, dude, you're telling me lies. And that's what the inner critic does, is just feed us lies and a really biased, ugly, negative version of ourselves that isn't true. And if we can find a way, if anything, if you take anything away from this, it's knowing that you don't have to listen to that voice because it's not true, and it's finding a way to defend ourselves against it. Yeah. But look, that's sort of a little bit about Are You OK, and why I think it's important, and how it breaks it down. A little bit kind of about my story, and it's kind of, this mental health ride is different for everyone. But I think if we've got a little bit of skills in knowing how to have a conversation, or knowing where to find support, and that you don't need to be the mental health counsellor for your friends, because that's really unhealthy for you and for them. And there's plenty of places that can. They're the things that can really help. So that's why I kind of like doing this, because it kind of cracks open conversation. I think it gives all of us permission to have them, and to sort of know what to do. So thank you guys for making the time, and joining for this chat, and coming in, because I think it's really important to have them. And like, as I said, if there's any questions you guys have on any of that, please feel free to ask, either now or anytime in the future.
Yeah, let's go to questions.
I have a question. Craig, great. First of all, Craig, great job. Just a quick question. Now I feel like everyone is dealing with like virtual fatigue or Zoom fatigue. What are you seeing with that? Like, how are you getting people to kind of refocus when it's just our job now to be on not calls like this, but, you know, calls for 8 o'clock in the morning or 7, whatever time zones. How are you seeing people get around this Zoom fatigue?
It's really funny. I did a talk at an ad agency this morning, which is, you know, my world when I'm working. And we were talking about this and just the impact that it has on our relationships as well with people that we work. Because, you know, normally in an office, we have these incidental chats, or if you've got an idea that you need to talk about, you can just do it. Whereas we don't have that now, and everything's really structured. So I don't think, I mean, hopefully we'll get to a point where there's a bit more balance between face-to-face and Zoom. But I think the fatigue is a little bit about almost leaning into it a bit and taking the fact that, you know, these are how we have to have some of these conversations. So rather than, this is the agenda and this is what we're going to talk about, making some time in those just for chat, and for talk, and to keep that kind of conversation going. There's a great show that ABC had that was like 6 or 7 episodes called Retrograde, that was made purely for the pandemic life. And it's like a group of 6 friends who set up an online bar, and like every day they arrange at a time that they can drop in and drop out and just chat and have wines and do what we're doing now and keep their friendship going. And I like, it's hilarious in its storylines, but it also shows how this can be used in a way that is not so fatiguing, and can actually add a bit of value while we're all kind of living in this, because it is exhausting. And it is different, and it does change how we talk to people. But I think while we're doing it, we just kind of have to lean into it a bit. And that's maybe how we're going to break the fatigue. And like, whenever you can, catching up with people face to face, you know, whether it's going for a walk and stuff like that. But I think there's a level of just accepting the things that we can't control, and then controlling how we use that, if that makes sense, if that helps at all.
And I know you're looking forward to tonight. Do you have any questions or comments, or would you like to share something with Craig?
Yes, well, first of all, congratulations, Craig. Fantastic, you know, the way you've got through everything you've got through, and are using that, you know, being informed by all your experiences to share in this way and help people. It's really fantastic, and, you know, I congratulate you. Well done. It's, you know, and doing it in a way that's really accessible for people to understand and take it on board. One question is about confidentiality. If you are asking someone, you know, are you okay? I think a lot of people feel that, you know, they're very concerned. I mean, they may feel they'd like to talk, but they're very worried about confidentiality. They wouldn't,
Yeah.
like it to be thought that whatever they say to you, or to anyone who's asking, not you of course, but anyone who's asking them, they'd be very concerned about it being maybe spread around or gossiped about. Yeah. And I know particularly, I think, for people who are professional people, well, I'm thinking too, people like doctors, nurses, etc. They're, even sometimes if they're feeling absolutely awful and they really need support, they have the additional worry of they don't want to be judged as being impaired and then possibly struck off or suspended for a while or have conditions put on them. And I mean, they're not really impaired, but they're just worried that people may think they are. And the APRA and all those licensing bodies, and that can be pretty tough, so like those are some of the barriers, I think, that make it hard for people to talk.
And Marion Monks, who's on the call as well. Marion's a nurse, actually. She's on the top left-hand side of my screen. But yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, Marion would know I do a fair bit of work in that area too, and it is something that is quite a big issue, and so we always do make sure people understand that whatever they're talking about is confidential. But then, of course, you've got a limit on that confidentiality, and that if you feel someone's acutely suicidal, you do have a duty of care to link them in with services. And as Craig referred to earlier, that could be quite urgent too. As you said, you'd need to call an ambulance. So, like, there are some limits and complications in some of these areas.
Yeah, it's all of that stuff that makes this conversation so complex. Like, not only do we have, does everyone have their own experiences with it and different things and different approaches that work with them. We have to think about that, but then you do have these layers of complication. And I think I've definitely seen changes and some really drastic and impressive changes in the workplace with the attitude towards mental health and
big changes.
I remember when I was 25 and the job that I had at the time, when I was just a mess, I remember having a conversation with my manager there that was essentially like, did you have to get it together or get out? And that conversation wouldn't happen today. That's where a lot of places have those EAP programs that are anonymous and are completely confidential and are really, really valuable that the workplaces have. So there's those things to lean into. Some people don't trust them. I understand, but also there's a point where you just have to trust that what you're being told is the truth, that it is all confidential, and the stuff that the employers see is literally just the number of calls and the type of service, but it's not about who it was offered to and what the issues were. None of that is shared. So it's those services, and your doctors have. There's a group that I did some work with earlier in the year that's called GPs Down Under. That is a wonderful group, and that's got like 5,000 GPs from around Australia in it, and they all talk and share about, obviously not sharing anything that they shouldn't, but with their own questions and any insights, and they share and work through challenges that they're seeing with either themselves and their patients. So it's kind of tapping into those trusted networks.
Those peer support networks can be invaluable. And I think another thing too, you've referred earlier, Craig, to resources you've got, but they can be so useful for some people who don't feel comfortable talking. They can communicate anonymously on some of those sites and websites and phone lines and things too.
Beyond Blue and Black Dog and Lifeline in particular, they have the models that they have, the apps that they have, and the services that they offer now are everything through to triage counselling, through to having counselling programs, and people can chat either by live chat like this or text chat because it's less confronting.
Yeah.
And it's leaning into those and knowing what's out there, which is, I think half the problem. One of the things on the New South Wales Mental Health Commission steering committee that I'm on, the thing that I keep banging on about as not being the healthcare worker, the focus is always on the triage and the hospital treatment plan and how how patients are looked after and taken through that journey. And I'm always jumping in as the loudmouth marketer and social media guy who's like, that's great, but there's probably like another 80% of things that you guys never even see and don't get to that point because of early intervention and conversations like this, and those support groups and just people supporting themselves. So it's like, how do we make that easier? Because I've had friends with me come and I need to find a therapist, or I'm looking for this. If we Google it, I don't even know where to start, like with the answers. So things we can do to make that easier. Like it's a big complex space.
Yeah. No, thanks, and excellent talk. Great work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
Philip, would you like to say anything, or Luke, Jason, Marion, Sarah? Hey, Luke.
I was just going to say thank you so much for sharing your story, Craig. And I apologise. I think I was on unmute for a while and I made some noise. So it wasn't that I wasn't listening. I was listening, but I apologise. Really amazing story, and fantastic that you've been able to overcome such a difficult upbringing, and you've been able to find not only the support to keep you going, but become an advocate for it. What I was going to ask, and it's something that I've found because I've had my own challenges with substance abuse and depression and whatever, and you come out the other end. But I find also, from my perspective, it's not necessarily knowing 100% what to say, and I think this relates to your friend sending you the gifts and just catching up. It's actually just being present sometimes, and sometimes even saying, look, I'm not really sure what to say, but I'm here and I can listen. And sometimes just being that sort of that voice, or not that voice, but that soundboard is also really supportive. And I think that's also like a really good message to send out to people, saying it's, as someone who doesn't have the formal training, you're not necessarily supposed to know what to say. And sometimes it's not really saying much at all. It's just letting people know that you're in their lives, come good or bad.
Yeah, and it's just being that friend.
Yeah.
Sometimes with me, usually when I catch up with friends or if I'm planning on doing something, as much as I might need to have a conversation and debrief with someone, usually the last thing I want to do is talk about it with friends, because I live with it all 24/7.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is always swirling around. So when I catch up with people, it's like my little escape from it. And that's part of what helps me manage and cope, is that I can get away from it and just have some fun and hear about somebody else's life, not Wesley going at me like 24/7.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not even about talking about it and debriefing. It is being it and being around.
And also like giving options, I think, saying, if you want, we can talk about, I'm here for you to talk about it, but also otherwise we can just catch up,
Yeah. And then, go to.
Hey, Craig, nice to see you. And thanks, Mike, for hosting this. Thanks for sharing your story. I have a few situations in my life with people that might be heavy drinkers or not, and just generally depressive. I know I am most of the time. But they do give hints about being suicidal at times, and some specific instances. And I've found there's moments where I have to just not answer the phone sometimes and just pray and hope that I do hear from them again the next morning, because they're on a substance or they're off their face or whatever.
Yeah.
And also if you bring it up the next day, they shy away and get embarrassed. Yeah, I don't know if you have any advice around that.
Look, it's, yeah, stuff like that is such a tough one. Mike and I were talking yesterday that like there are people that I've had to have words with through DMs because, you know, you get a bit messed up or a bit drunk, and then it's really easy to send abusive DMs. And I've had a few people where I've had that issue, and I've just had to like shut them down and manage that a little bit. And so there's definitely an element of looking after ourselves, because like we can't be on call 24/7 to anyone, as much as we kind of want to be there for our friends and be the one that helps. And you don't. I have been in the situation where I did ignore the call, and you know, the next day I got a call from that person's parents saying that they had kind of taken their own life, and like that was devastating. But I think there's a really clear distinction that we have to keep in mind for ourselves, that we're not responsible for anybody's behavior but our own. And as much as we want to help and as much as we want to be there, we need to protect ourselves and look after ourselves as much as other people. And if not answering the call was the last call, that's not something that we're responsible for. And like it hurts and it's hard to process, but it is actually okay that we were looking after ourselves that night. Or it was 3 a.m. and I was asleep. Like, how was I supposed to answer the phone? As much as my sleep patterns are a mess. So there's those things of kind of managing our own guilt with that, and just putting in boundaries with friends. And chances are, if they're calling you when they're messed up, 99% of the time, they're going to be there the next morning. And they are going to be a bit embarrassed. I've had apology messages from friends. I've sent apology messages myself to people after those conversations that you got a bit ranty or a bit heated or went sideways. And there is a point where I think we're allowed to draw some boundaries and some lines and being like, so this stuff is not okay. Like, I'm here for you, like, whatever you do when you're really struggling and when you need it, like, I'm here. But calling me at 2 a.m. when you're messed up to have a rant or abuse me or go off the rails about nothing is not cool. And actually calling that behavior out, like we should be, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but doing it in a safe way.
Yeah, expressing your concern. And I think, reiterating what you both said, Sarah and Craig, about just those little things, little memes, little links to YouTube videos that might remind that person that somebody is thinking about them. It doesn't have to be a full-on conversation. It can literally take a minute.
Yeah. It's stupid things to laugh about. Like there's a site called The Mighty. Like when I'm feeling, you know, really, really depressed. That's one of my favorite sites from a mental health perspective. And one of my favorite things they've ever posted is like 40 memes for people who really understand the existential crisis of deep depression.
Right.
And it's just these like stupid memes, because my sense of humor is really, really dark, that are things like, one of them is, you know, a 2-panel meme where the first one's like, oh, somebody stole my identity, and the second one, like, oh, maybe they'll make something out of my life. You know, or another one's like, oh, no, like, I don't suffer from depression. I'm actually really good with depression. I'm down with it. It's one of the few things in my life I'm good with. That is really dark and does help. So they're good things to send people, that reconnecting stuff, that like setting boundaries. You can always like send a message and be like, oh dude, let's chat in the morning. Like, I'll call you then. I've done that with people, and they either don't answer because they're asleep or whatever reason, or if we do talk, they dodge the thing completely and don't want to talk about it, in which case that lets me open it up to go, so you can't do that. Like, it makes me feel really bad. It obviously makes you feel really bad. So like, what do we do to stop this happening? Because I don't like abusive phone calls from high people at 3 a.m. So you kind of, you build into those boundaries. I don't know if that helps, but it's just kind of putting those frameworks and rules and your own thinking in place.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Philip, Philip, were you wanted to say something before?
Philip.
Oh.
Sorry, I thought. Oh, sorry. Just briefly, Mike. Craig, what you just talked about with boundary work is extremely important for people, including myself. That was one of my major problems that I've had. One of the things, though, about the boundaries is how that operates on social media. Now, as you know, not you and I, but we have had some stoushes, particularly when you've brought up subjects like Black Lives Matter or circumcision or a few other things. You know, we both like Lego too. I mean, obviously it's a slightly different medium, but, and, you know, we both had been on the receiving end of trolls and things like that. You slightly differently because you're well known. But my question, I guess, is, yeah, how do you handle particularly people who just want to communicate through social media, and particularly when you see on your posts, I'm talking about your personal page, some of the things that were said to you, like I've had to end up blocking some of the people because I'll just rush in and you know, because your page is public. So what I'm asking is, yeah, how do you handle that particular aspect?
Trolls and negativity and people coming at you?
Yes.
It's funny, I posted just before
I saw that.
That are you okay? Like, for me, it does feel really, really different this year because I haven't had any death threats. I haven't had any DMs like trying to insult me by calling me an attention seeker. I haven't had anyone telling me that I hope they hope I walk out into oncoming traffic. Like,
might see yourself.
Yeah. Like, yeah, normally at this time of year, and I get them, like, there's some points where I get like a death threat or some threat of violence, like at least once a week. And you just, I think there's a thing of seeing it for what it is and being able to laugh at somebody's taken some time out of their day to throw this like toxic poison stuff at you just for fun. It's like, do you not have anything better to do with your life? I'm not that interesting. And also you don't know where I live, so good luck trying to kill me and track me down. And you know, I can laugh at it all, I think, because my sense of humor is quite dark. And you know, I know that my inner critic can do far more damage to me than anybody else. So anything that anyone else throws at me, I'm like, go for it. I bring it on if you can beat him. So it's that ability to laugh at it. And it's, you know, I also, the shit that I post online and conversations that I start, I generally don't start unless I have a pretty solid like view and opinion of it that I know is backed up. So when people do come for me, I can get like my belligerent Smurfette boots on and be like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much. And can sort of defend myself. But I think if you don't have that, that's when it becomes really, really dangerous. And I don't know how I'd go. And I've thought about this a few times with my attitude towards trolls. If I was a celeb or somebody really well known and just getting like toxic trash thrown at me all the time, I would probably delete all my social accounts, like some of them do, because the point sit alone where you do start questioning, are they right? Am I really this horrible person doing these things? Am I just an attention seeker and yellow's just a really good way to stand out and get even more attention? You know, and it's all rubbish. And we shouldn't actually listen to it or give it any attention because the people coming for us don't really know us in a way to be coming, you know, like anything. I'd like to see someone come at me who actually knows me and like find the sore point to twist the knife, because then I might actually be worried. Yeah, I think it's just knowing it's all just crap. Like, don't pay attention to it. But one question, I know it's like getting late, so I kind of want to, you know, I don't want to keep anybody too late, but there is one question that I've got by PM that's like, do you think mental health issues are sometimes a superpower and not something that we need to solve? You know, and is it just something to come to peace with within ourselves? And I think, like for me, we are all made up of all different things. And this is going back to, I think, the Smurfs post that I wrote today. This is a really weird twist. But one way that I've come to kind of manage my mental health is to look at what goes on in my mind through the lens of a Smurf village. And like, you know, each different emotion and shade and mood and vibe is represented by a different Smurf. And so I know that, you know, if I'm in a daydreamy day where it's just all about selfies and like a little bit of shady laughs, I know that Smurfette has checked in for work. Or if I'm just being an antagonistic little prick for the fun of it and having fun, I know that, oh, jokey's working. Or, you know, if things are feeling a bit more in control and organised, like a couple of Smurfs on the ball. And it's what it allows me to do is label and control and identify each emotion really, really clearly, and being able to then manage that, and knowing that they each have that, knowing that every emotion is valid. You know, unlike things like the happiness movement kind of tell us happiness is amazing and is the goal. Actually, emotional intelligence and knowing that happiness is just as important as sorrow and sadness and all of those things, and they all have a role to play. And playing it out through Smurf Village allows me to do that and give each one its voice and its time when it's relevant, and lets me balance them off as well. And it's a really interesting thing, so it gets me weird, when that like soul-crushing depression and darkness really, really comes in. I don't look at it as Smurfs that live in the village. I kind of see it as evil Smurfs that are invading it. And then the Smurfs have to kind of fight and battle these evil ones to get them out of the village and bring everything back to normal, which is like such a ridiculous image. Like, you know, Smurfette dressed up in her Wonder Woman outfit, like fighting off other evil Smurfs. And it's almost like, even when I'm like dead inside and soul crushed at the bottom of a dark well, just that image of Smurfs battling Smurfs for a village that is my soul is so ridiculous that I have to laugh. And that laughter then helps to disempower that thing that's trying to take you over, which then helps to manage it. So I kind of think there's a great TED talk by a US psychologist called Brene Brown, who some people may know, that is called The Power of Vulnerability. And what she talks about is while we fear and run from vulnerability and we're told that it's a bad thing, it's an incredibly powerful emotion and place to come from, and to lean into and to use. And if we lean into that vulnerability and open ourselves up to that, you can achieve like incredible things. If I'd not found that talk, I wouldn't be doing this thing with Are You Okay? You know, and I wouldn't, there's no way I would be expressing this to the world.
I just want to say super quickly, Craig, Marion Monks and Jen Webster. So Marion is a healthcare worker and Jen works with the homeless. Can you just, I know it's very late, but Marion, could you give a quick update on from a mental wellbeing perspective for the healthcare workers, and after that, Jen? Like, how are you guys coping?
I think that there's a lot of people out there who are really scared of the COVID situation at the moment. So recently I've been involved in doing a lot of the swabbing, and the question that I get asked a lot is, am I frightened? And I think they look at me aghast when I say no, because I feel like I do everything that I can to avoid getting it, but it's been people who do everything for some reason are getting it, you know, with the hand hygiene and the masks and everything else. And so I just say to people, we just have to do the best that we can do. And if you've got symptoms, get tested. So
I know your hours have been 14-day shifts.
11 12-hour shifts, yeah, which are really long days. But that's nothing really when you think about when people have to go into isolation and don't get to see their loved ones, and with the borders and everything closed, not even being able to go back home to New Zealand to see my family, and I don't know when that's going to happen, you know. But I just have to look at it that it is what it is, and I need to look after myself, surround myself with people that I care about and who care about me, and just help to reassure those people out in the community, and to be there if and when you're needed.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Marion. And Jen, how's the homeless going?
So was your question more about how, so are we as a team coping, or how are our patrons coping?
The patrons and general wellbeing.
Yeah, and look, and our patrons are a bit fearful, and they have every right to be, because they have, you know, they're more at risk than we are. I had an interesting occasion, this was weeks ago, when it was all just coming out of lockdown, and a patron came up and we offered to take his temperature, and he said no, because I don't know where that's been. I was like, okay, fair enough, you don't need that. Interestingly, in line with Are You Okay Day, I've been doing a whole lot of reading today on the causality of homeless, or the intersection between homelessness and mental health. And while there's a great misconception that a lot of people become homeless due to mental illness or poor mental health, in fact, it's usually mental illness is a result of homelessness. So you become homeless, and then of course you become anxious, depressed, and your mental health suffers. So that's, you know, it's a huge reason why you just need to be mindful and careful with people. So look, the patrons are a bit nervous. There's a palpable sense in the last couple of weeks of there's some sense of normality. People are coming back. We're finding the groups that all know each other are clustering together. Sorry, cluster's not a good word, but they're hanging around together. And yeah, everyone's feeling a bit more relaxed in knowing that it's, you know, we're kind of okay, sort of, and just, you know, as Marion said, do all the prevention you can, do everything possible. We give them masks, you know, sanitize, we take their temperatures. It's just being careful and showing them that we're careful. That's, I think, the biggest thing.
Yeah, I love how OK Day extends to, yeah, we know as a community, particularly in Darlinghurst and Hills and Potts Point, I mean, we all live here day in, day out and get to know our homeless community as well. And just through this period in particular, but always just acknowledging and treating them exactly the same as we like to be treated. I mean, I think that's really shone through this period. So I think there's a lot more awareness now, which has been wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's really important as well that the community at large, and also people who do experience homelessness, that if they come and get swabbed for if they might be symptomatic and want to get swabbed for their own peace of mind, that they do go into isolation. That they are put up in a hotel for however long it is before their results come back, so that they are looked after as well.
Wow.
Sean, I know you joined the call late. Would you like to add any comments or ask a question of Craig?
Oh, well, yeah, kia ora, everyone. And I hear you, Marion, about going back home to New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi as well. Yeah, it just seems like it's going on forever. And how do we stay positive?
Yeah, it's a very stressful time for people who particularly have family in New Zealand and overseas. I mean, you just can't get there. It's just you know, really frustrating and worrying. And there's been so many situations that you know, people haven't been able to get to family before they've passed away, and it's just yeah, very, very frustrating and saddening.
And like stressful. It's like, I know it's such a cliche, but it's just stuff that our generation has never ever been through anything like this before. So it's so unfamiliar with no reference point, and not even anybody really from generations before us that we can talk to and go, how the hell did you guys get through this? Like we're fumbling our way through it and trying to find ways to stay positive and reaching down and trying, I think, not to completely lose our minds while being in this like unstable, always changing, unsure, unfamiliar world. I think that comes down to like being able to find something positive and find some happiness in it. Really, at the moment, comes down to reaching some of the tiny little things of gratitude, and that can bring us joy, and like pulling things from that, because the things that we're used to just don't exist and we can't have access to, which really sucks. And it's sort of acknowledging the things that we just don't have control over, and being able to label them that way and being like, yeah, this is a mess, but I can't control this. The stuff that I can control is how I react to that, or how I counterbalance that, or the things that I do to just like make it through without losing my mind.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment about it. It's something that we can't control, but you've already done it, so thank you.
There's a great book that I absolutely enjoy. It's one of my favorites, and it's called Tiny Beautiful Things by a woman called Cheryl Strayed, who wrote the novel Wild.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, that's a great book. So This was when, at the time, she was like an anonymous online agony aunt. And this sounds really naff when I explain it. People would just write in with like their problems, as they do with an agony aunt, to get advice. And she would give like different people advice, but it's not like Cosmo, agony aunt, or your typical ones. The advice that she gives is just really raw and real and meaningful and empathetic. And the book is like a publication of just letters that she get and her responses to them. And it takes you through like every emotion that you can possibly have, from like joy to just, it's had me sobbing in tears from one letter and just pissing myself laughing in the next one, just from the different things that people would write in about and her advice. So, you know, if you need, I think if you're looking for ways to kind of reconnect with different emotions and actually feel, because I know there's been many times over this year where it's been like, I don't actually feel anything, or I don't know what I feel. This is a great way to feel, I think, and a really simple way, because they're just essentially short stories. And I think that's a great way to kind of find something positive and something to connect with through all of this while we can't. So it's one of my like best highly recommended reads.
I'd probably back that up and just say, yeah, I've been reading a couple of lovely books on hope recently, and just proving that there is hope, and you know, there's tremendous hope in the world. And the one great book explains that the news is established to paint, yes, that one, Rutger Bregner. Yeah, so he says the news is designed to paint the worst case scenario and paint doom and gloom. But in fact, if you strip all that away, at our core as human people, we are, you know, beautiful, caring, kind creatures. Well, not creatures, but you know, we are, and people will go out of their way to help one another given the opportunity.
Yep.
So you read beautiful books about hope, and it kind of restores your hope and makes you feel again.
Just like restores your faith in humanity, things like that.
I'm also a big fan of creating the world you want it to be as well. So, you know, if you're seeing, and not everyone comes around to this point of view, so I accept that, but I think if things aren't the way that you want, then do your best to make it happen. So at least you know that you've done your part to try and create it, rather than waiting for others to create it for you. That's something that I've tried to sort of put in place in my life. And again, I know depending on where you're at with different stages of your own mental well-being, it can be challenging, but that's something that I've always sort of had, as, you know, as I've gotten through my tough times, I'm like, you know, and I start to get, you know, if I have any difficulties again, I sort of think, okay, well, you know, I don't want to go back to sort of being really unhappy. So what do I want? How can I do my part to make that happen? And it still may not be exactly what you wanted, but at least, you know, you've put in the effort to try and make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
I've been reading this book as well. I've had to pull the books out now because Jen mentioned this one.
It's not a book off, Mike.
Utopia is Deputy Lord Mayor Jess Scully wrote this book and released it at the beginning of August. But it's like idea generation for the new world, and it just paints a story that everyone can make a difference, and what we have today doesn't have to be tomorrow. And it's so empowering, and just really strips everything down. And it's like, we can start afresh. We can change things. Just because there's a rule doesn't mean we have to have it in the future. We can change things, and it's really empowering.
And I think to that point, like, people who get involved in these sorts of events, and, you know, Jen, you're involved with the homeless. Marion, you're involved with, healthcare. And I think people do what they can. And I think as long as you keep plugging away at, whether it's just joining a forum or actually devoting your time or doing something that you're paid to do, whatever, it's like you're all a part of the solution.
Yeah, very true. Well said.
And I'd just like to acknowledge Mike and the Darlo Darlings. I think what Sarah was just saying about, more as trying to be the change we want to see in the world. I'd like to acknowledge what you're doing, Mike, and making it a more friendly, caring community. It's really great. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of other people do too.
Oh.
So
Yes, me too.
good on you.
Doesn't he do an amazing job?
I think it's, my biggest bugbear of social media is that people these days can't respect that someone else has a view
Oh, yeah.
not the same as their own. And I think, I've been accused of a lot of things and over moderating the group and those types of things. But at the end of the day, it's just nice to have an environment where people can comment and inspire one another instead of tearing each other apart. And we have achieved that culture, which is great. And there's nearly 5,000 people in the group now. And I just hope it continues that way. And for me personally, it's just been wonderful to connect with the community and, I've met great friends through Darlo Darlings and it's helped me a lot with loneliness and isolation as well. And, I just think it's just nice to be neighborly and my view of being a neighbor has changed as well. And, I think, being a good neighbor is, offering to check the mail and water the plants. And now, I met Sarah on the call tonight because Sarah had had an injury on her leg and she couldn't leave her apartment. And I offered to take some groceries over. And that's where the first time I met Sarah. And
that's not true, Mike. We met through Gab, but that's one of the first times that we really connected.
I've often chatted with Anne at Oxford Village and I've met Anne's son Tim, and I know Marion, of course. And it's just been really nice to connect, and it's as simple as that, I think. And that's helped me not feel isolated. If I look back sort of 10 years ago in Sydney, I definitely felt more isolated than I do today. So I hope that other people can feel less isolated because of these types of things. And there's a lot of, social media is inundated with trolls, as Michael and Craig talked about before. And I hate seeing those videos with, like on ABC and SBS when the premiers come out every day and talk about the COVID stats and things like that before they even enter the stage. The comments are just crazy and abusive and horrible. And I just don't know. For me personally, I would just never. My mother always said, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it. And I stand by that today. I mean, it's not cliche. That's just good manners and being a good person. And it really frustrates me when I see friends who comment on things that are, I just don't get it. And it's like, why would you even say that? I just don't understand why you'd comment to, make someone's life worse or make someone's day bad. Our job is to make someone's day a good day and not,
Yeah.
It's such a terrible way to use your energy, I think. Like, you really want to make time in your day to go out and attack like strangers online for fun. Read a book.
No. Hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
So
I think we also get caught up in the groupthink and the pitchfork mentality that humans fall into. And one person starts doing it and somebody else starts, and then all of a sudden it's this avalanche that can be really easy to get caught up in if you don't step back and be like, why am I actually attacking this person? Or throwing that comment out. But people aren't great at that critical thinking and that reflection before acting now, because it's so easy. But there's been there's always times, I think I did it today, where I went to engage in a conversation. I was just like, do I really need to do this? Like, no, I actually don't. Like, I don't agree with what you've said, and actually you're being a really horrible person, but I don't need to get into an argument with a stranger about their behavior online.
No, and it's also commenting on things that there was a post yesterday. I mean, people often complain about the internet speeds, obviously, and things like that. But there was somebody to come in saying, "No wonder the internet's bad. Malcolm Turnbull's always in my memory and not in good thoughts. He's to blame for these." What things people hold on to these silly things, and it's such a waste of energy. And instead of coming in and saying, where do you live? Or, I said to one of my neighbours the other day, their internet wasn't working. You can come over and use mine. I mean, just be helpful and not disruptive and negative. And I just find the negativity on social media from some people sometimes that to me is very depressing. And it's been nice to create the Darlo Darlings group to foster sort of more positivity. And if people want to be negative, I mean, there's plenty of outlets for them to go to. So
Yes.
I just focus on the quality of interactions and not the, I don't like to use the word Karens or Keiths, but it's just, nice to have people just being genuine and authentic and, helpful.
Yeah.
Look, we should probably wrap up. It's like 8 o'clock, and I know that.
Yes, thank you so much, Craig.
Yeah,
thank you, Craig.
very much.
Cheers, Craig.
Pleasure. But it's really funny. I don't know if any of you guys are in like the Pots Pointers group, but like the just juxtaposition of Pots Pointers and Darlo Darlings, it like cannot be clearer in the amazing community and rules and vibe that you've set up and that you actually enforce as well, and be like, no, this isn't acceptable. That's not what we're here for. And like, that's what makes it such a great place to be, and want to interact with. So
I only ever had to say stop it once, which was last week. And so that was a good thing.
Yeah. But you kind of have to do that. But
apart from that, everyone's great. So I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah, no, it is. And like all of the conversations that we've had, like we can continue these like through the group, or like if you ever want to chat through DMs or message, like, right, feel free and do it. That's kind of what we're here for, because like there's so much to talk about with this stuff, and there is so much to share and ways that we kind of can help each other. But like I think there's been some great stuff that we've all shared. So just like thanks everyone for kind of jumping in and participating and being part of it.
Thanks, Craig. And make sure you check out Craig's blog, which is craigontoast.com, and his Instagram is Craig on Toast, and Facebook page as well. But thanks so much, Craig, for everything you do for the community and everything you give back. It's really amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. It was fantastic. And thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thanks, boys. Thank you both so much.
Thanks for the
Thank you
recommendations online too.
Yeah,
good recommendations.
Good.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.